Hello everybody, this is Eli from Elfbait, and we're at day 4 of the 30-day Dungeons & Dragons challenge, and it's still Monday. Yes, I'm cheating. I'm filming these on, most of these, or at least these first few, on the same day, doing them back to back, because this is my day off, and that's when I can do it. I am a man of little pretense and little... I'm not going to lie to you and try and cheat you and keep a supply of shirts off to the side that I just change out every time. Nope, not going to do that. This is day 4, though, and this is your favorite game world. What is my favorite game world? Mine. I'm a DM. I'm a world builder. I love my world. No, seriously. I like creating worlds, but if I had to pick a favorite published world to really like, I'm going to have to go super old school and go back to Greyhawk. Maybe it's nostalgia speaking. Maybe it's the fact that Greyhawk to me seems like the most developed yet open and generic game world to play in. I love it. The box set for Greyhawk came out when I was in junior high, I think, maybe a little bit before. The maps were amazing. They covered my wall in vivid color and hexes, and they were gridded. It was still, today, in my mind, one of the best campaign maps. It was not as artistically pure as some of the newer maps where it's very well rendered and stuff. It was functional. It was made out of this material that was like next to indestructible unless you like really wanted to wreck it. But yeah, it was heavy duty. And the books that came with that, the Gazetteer for all the settings, for all the countries in one book. And then you had influential leaders and rulers, and you had troop, I think you even had like troop numbers and stuff for various kingdoms, like how many of this they had and how many of that they had. And then there was the entire other book, the World Book, that had things like climate bands and weather charts and how to figure out what the temperature was by the time of year. And it was the first time it was the first campaign setting I had opened up, and it had all this information. Yet with all of that, it wasn't as built up as Forgotten Realms. It wasn't even as built up in my mind as Krynn. Krynn is a great world. I mean, it's very evocative. It's very interesting. But Krynn, if you're not engaged in the Dragon War, I think this is the problem with any game setting that is built around a serious world-altering event. Playing other stuff in that world just feels like you're adventuring along in the background of this foregone conclusion. It's why Middle-earth role-playing games, always, Middle-earth is amazing and it's got all this cool stuff. I always felt like playing in those settings, I was insignificant. I wasn't really doing anything, and actually changing anything in those worlds was really risking a story I really loved. But Greyhawk really didn't have that. Later on we ended up with some modules. Actually through the modules is how Greyhawk really was developed. And so while we had guys like Ayaz creeping around and Mordenkainen and all those famous wizards that were all named and everything, was it the guy in the Lost Caverns of Sojkanth? What is his name? Like Zagyig or whatever. Or the Zagyig or whatever. These guys are all there, but they're all parts of modules. But the world itself was very much bare bones. It was kind of like reading in a lot of ways, kind of like reading Conan, where you knew the general feel of the particular nations and the players in the realm. You knew who was the good kingdom. You knew who the bad kingdom was. You had a big map with all the cities and everything, and you knew where things were. But I remember pieces of lore that kind of started creeping up, and I couldn't tell you to this day if I know that they were actually officially published or if they were just something that crept into the collective consciousness of Greyhawk. I remember that up above the very northern poles of Greyhawk, supposedly there were blue bugbears. And whether or not anywhere in the game it ever says anywhere that there were blue bugbears up there, in my mind, as far as I can recall, as long as I've ever been playing D&D, there are freaking blue bugbears up in the polar north of the world of Greyhawk. I don't care somebody could pull out a piece of paper signed by Gary Gygax that says there's no blue bugbears there, and I wouldn't believe them. I don't care. They're blue bugbears. To the point where blue bugbears appear in some of my other campaign worlds. Why? Because they're freaking blue. No, it's a cool way of doing doing a classic race and having it fit into another monster, have it fit, and all you're doing is changing color. But anyways, Greyhawk was unspoiled. It was empty. It didn't have lots of novels written about it. It didn't have tons of lore built up for it. And I'm not in any way trying to talk smack about Faerun and the Forgotten Realms. Faerun and the Forgotten Realms is amazing for exactly the opposite reason. Faerun and the Forgotten Realms has so much information. It's like a Tolkien world. Tolkien had everything figured out. And so you can create off of that. There's no question what is going on in Faerun. If you like a campaign setting that has lots of background and everything, Faerun is awesome. But Greyhawk still to this day, as far as published worlds, stands out as one of my all-time favorites. I liked the kingdom names: Furiondi, Ulick, Nyrond. Terms like marches and steadings, and Gygax, when he and whoever, and all the guys who put that world together, they searched for every freaking term that could explain a piece of geography, and they threw it into one world. I wish that some of the other realms, like Andi and Near Div. I mean, there's a piece of water called the Near Div. What the hell is a div? But whatever, it didn't matter. And then he had it broken down. I guess maybe the history guy in me started creeping in there, because you had humans, but then you had like the Flanés and all of these people that were like ethnic, not like skin color or anything, but there were like language groups that existed in Greyhawk. And to this day, I can't create a campaign world where there aren't language groups. I freaking hate common, but I understand it's a necessity. So in most games, I have a trade tongue. Common in my games is sort of a pigeon language. It's a trade pigeon that's developed in regions. And I've even gone so far as in some areas to have common that is specific to different regions. Like the common here isn't going to do you a damn bit of good over here, because there's 2,000 miles of distance and they just have their own trade tongues. Now, that's complex. But anyways, kind of even that, a lot of my world building, I think, spawns from my early encounters with Greyhawk. The use of language, the use of terms like marches and steadings, and coming up with interesting names for places that necessarily aren't just saying, here is a sea, but here's a div. Even though that's probably derived from some, Earth language, word, which I haven't taken the time to look up in 38 years. But whatever. The point is, Greyhawk had so much, but it had so much of what it needed, and it didn't mess around with what it didn't need. I knew who the bad guys were in Greyhawk. I knew who the good guys were in Greyhawk. And there were all these little places that never really got used in other games, but they had cool names. They had like these really evocative names. The Wild Coast or the Savage Coast or whatever. And you knew that place was just some dark, monster-infested place. But then you had kingdoms that, Furiondi and Nywind and Ulick and all these places, these duchies, and then you'd have places that had the same name, and then they're like the duchy, and then the county or the kingdom and the duchy, and they had this complexity of nobility and this kind of trickle down. It was just really cool. On-Wall. On-Wall. It's a cool name. What is it? It's on and wall. But these names were really good. They didn't bog down in a lot of heavy linguistics a lot of times, even though I know I said that they had some interesting, curious linguistics that were being used, and that they really just scoured the thesaurus for place names. kingdom types and all of that, and governmental. But that was a thing in AD&D too. If you remember in the back of the DM's guide, you had that chart and that table that showed comparatively all the ranks and titles for various nobilities from different culture types, and that's really good to use. So again, it was just an awesome foundation for world building. And there was room to add your own. Sorry, something moved. I'm in the garage, so something moves. You're like, anyways. But yeah, Greyhawk was a great world. I have tinkered around in every campaign setting, almost every campaign setting that's come out. I think an interesting close second for favorite world for me, Forgotten Realms. I'm not going to talk Forgotten Realms. It's not my favorite world, but I also like Mystara, which I didn't even know it had a name until well down the road with playing D&D. It was just I didn't realize that. For the longest time, I didn't realize that the BX world was not in Greyhawk. As a kid, I just assumed that BX was just a different system being run in Greyhawk. And a lot of it is and isn't. I mean, even to this day, I think where the actual dungeons took place for the various adventures is still up in the air. I know, like, seeing as Forgotten Realms is sort of the default setting for 5th edition, for example, with things like the Yawning Portal, Tales of the Yawning Portal. I haven't picked up the book, so I may be wrong, but suddenly we've got access to all of these other adventures, and I'm not sure if they're supposed to take place in their constituent campaign settings or if they're actually somehow all brought into Forgotten Realms. But I also know, like, Dwellers in the Forbidden City, that city, Omu, is dropped in the middle of, and this may be a spoiler for Tomb of Annihilation, but Omu is in Tomb of Annihilation. So I don't know if Dwellers in the Forbidden City was originally written as a Faerun setting, but I know Chult is in Faerun, and if you put Omu in Chult, and Chult is in Faerun, well, now Omu is in Faerun. So Omu is in the Forgotten Realms, even though I think it was written either world agnostic, or it was written, with Greyhawk in mind. But anyways, Greyhawk is my favorite. I played Dark Sun, I played Ravenloft, I played. I never touched Eberron. I just wasn't looking for a new world. But yeah, I mean, I tend to do homebrew more nowadays than anything. I mean, I started world building one world when, in junior high, and we played that one all the way up until kind of my gaming scarce period after 2nd edition and into third. But even when we started playing 3rd edition, it was still my own homebrew world. That world is called Arterra, if you're ever interested, and that was very, very scientific naming for that campaign setting. We kept referring to it as our world, and realized that in game we hadn't given it a name, and so we just like our world, it's our world, it's Arterra, or Arterra. So Arterra is how we came. So basically, really, our world is almost literally a play on saying it's our world. But Arterra became the campaign setting. I don't even play in that one anymore. But yes, favorite published gaming setting, favorite published game world in D&D. And I have to say, I have to actually qualify that, because my favorite gaming world is not a D&D world. There are actually a couple others outside of you. I love Gamma World, and I love the After the Bomb setting from the TMNT games, and I really dig Star Wars. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and Star Wars is one of the settings that you can just play in forever and never exhaust it. But as far as D&D, because this is the 30-day Dungeons and Dragons challenge, yes, Greyhawk. Greyhawk is where I started. Greyhawk is where I fell in love with the game, and Greyhawk will always have a special place in my heart. Anyways, this is Eli from Elfbait. Of course it is. What channel are you watching? Anyways, tell me about the world that you love most down in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe. Send carrier pigeons, ravens, wolves, talk to a moth. Whatever it takes to spread the word about the channel. I would like this channel to grow. I would like it to be a community. I would like to hear from people. I love comments. Can't get enough of them. And I will respond to them all. If you haven't joined over on Facebook, I did set up a Facebook group for this channel a while back. It's a great way to throw out questions and stuff between episodes. If it's a simple question, I'll answer it there. If it's a complex question, I will answer it in a video. I'm also on Google Plus as Elfbait as well. So there's the Elfbait group on Facebook. There's the Elfbait group, or Elfbait Me. It's not a group, it's not a community. Over on Google Plus. Over on Google Plus, it ties into a lot of my other YouTube subscriptions, so you'll also see videos feeding in there from the awesome guys at Nerdarchy and Cody over at Talking 20, and I talk like I know the guy, but honestly, maybe 5 tweets. Anyways, I'm also Elfbait on Twitter. I'm getting into all of the social media hookups, and I've even ventured into Discord as Elfbait. The point is, I'm out there, and if you want to turn Elfbait into the next cool community, even though it's me in the garage and no fancy music or graphics or whatever, I've got tons of crap I want to talk about with you guys, and I love answering questions, love sharing the craft of DMing, and this 30-day Dungeons & Dragons challenge is just another excuse for me to get out and make videos and talk to you. So, I'm going to stop the ramble, and I'm going to go ahead and hit the button to stop this video. And if you've been paying attention, you'll probably see me in my Activision shirt here in the next video, because, well, I've still got time. Anyways, take care, guys. Get out and game.